Hey guys, welcome back as we continue our discussion of jQuery. So last week we basically went through this top section here in the jQuery tutorial on W3 Schools, and this week we want to go through this section under jQuery effects. And just a reminder, make sure that whenever you've uploaded a homework assignment that you check back there after I've graded that assignment, because I do upload the solution, and just want to make sure that you correct any kind of issues that you had, so that as we move forward on this end of the year project, that your code is all up to date and working like it's supposed to. Okay. All right. So anyway, hide and show. We actually used the hide and the show method last week. So basically, you select some object. In this case, you're selecting the paragraph. So you have just to kind of walk through this code and make sure that everything is clicking with you. Since this is the click event, the what we're doing here is that we are selecting an element on the page that has an ID of hide, right? That's why the pound sign hide is there. And for the click event of that element, that's why you have the click method being called here. Whenever someone clicks whatever element has the hide ID, we're going to execute this function, right? This is just a normal JavaScript function. And what is that function going to do? Well, it's going to select every element on the page that is a paragraph element, and it's going to hide those elements on the page. So if we were to jump over there and check this out, you can see that with the code running, when I click hide, it hides the paragraph tag that's at the top of the page. And if I click show, then the opposite happens. So undoubtedly, the thing that has the hide ID here is the hide button. And sure enough, we can go down here and we can see that. There's the button with the ID hide, and then there's a button with the ID show, which is selected here. And when you click that, we're going to show the paragraphs on the page. So pretty simple and straightforward. We went over that last week. What we didn't talk about, though, is that there's actually a second parameter, and you're going to have to think way back to when we looked at JavaScript, last semester. But in JavaScript, you have this idea of optional parameters, right? And so you don't have to pass in a value for that parameter. But if you do, if that parameter is available to you, then there are additional things that will happen when you make that function call. So in the case of hide, you can pass in an optional speed parameter. And then we'll talk about this in a second. There's an additional parameter that you can pass in, which is your callback parameter. But here's the speed parameter here. And it's just the speed at which you hide or show an element, right? So I want to jump over to the page that we were working on last week, because we actually added jQuery to this page. We got all that up and running. And so I don't know if you remember, but we had it set up to where when we roll over, when we mouse enter any paragraph tag, and the only paragraph on our page is this section at the top up here. When you mouse enter that, it sets the background color of the paragraph to yellow. And then when you mouse leave right here, then it sets that background color back to white. But let's say in addition to that, whenever we roll over this guy, let's say we want to hide all of the snowboards that are down here, right? And so in addition to setting the background color, we can put another line in here whenever you roll over it that's going to, we're going to select everything. Let me make this a little bit bigger, making sure that you can see it. We're going to select everything that has, let's see, what are our divs? Our divs are class boards. That's the class name that we use there. So everything with the class name boards, we're going to select all of those, and we're going to hide those, right? And we'll do the reverse whenever we, we'll do the reverse whenever we mouse leave the paragraph section. We'll show those guys, all right? All right, so let's just verify that's working for us. Let me refresh my page here. So now when I roll over this, we see that all the boards are hidden. When I roll off of the paragraph, the boards come back. But what about, what if we want to do that slowly over a period of time? Well, like I said, there's this optional parameter here that's called the speed parameter for that hide function call. And we can say we want to hide it, but we want it, but we want it to take 2,000 milliseconds to hide, all right? So, and 2,000 milliseconds to show. So let's see what happens when I do that now. Now when I, let me reload. Now when I roll over it, it slowly hides pretty cool. And when I roll off of it, it slowly comes back. So just something built in, kind of a neat effect, maybe not necessarily useful, but there may be circumstances that that would be beneficial to be able to hide and show things in that fashion. There's also a toggle command. So the nice thing about toggle is that you don't have to worry about whether the current item that you're selected is hidden or shown at the time. Just whatever state it's in is going to flip it to the opposite state. So if I change that to toggle and refresh my page here, then whenever I roll over it, since they're all showing, since all of these boards are showing right now, if I roll over it, it's going to hide it. And when I roll off of it, it's going to show it, because it's going, not because I explicitly called the hide or the show function, but because it's just toggling its visibility state. If it was visible before, it's going to set its visibility to off, or if it was not visible before, it's going to turn visibility on, right? So toggle allows you to just flip whatever the current visibility state is of that object, of that element. Okay. So there's some exercises for you to go through there. Like I said, we're going to talk about this callback function, but I don't want to get to that yet. We'll discuss that in greater detail shortly. Fade, some of these things, I just want you guys to be aware of it. I'll just kind of show you the example that they give us online here. Click to fade the boxes. So it's similar to the hide and the show, giving a particular speed to it, right? And you can see how when they call the fadeIn method, the top box, the div1, it's going to come in a little faster because it just fades in quickly. You can pass in a slow parameter that fades this one in a little slower, and then you can specify the actual time that it takes for something to fade in. It's very similar to what we did with the show method or the hide method whenever we specified the length of time that it was going to take for us to hide or show it. But it's just another function that you can call besides hide and show. There's a fade in. It makes perfect sense that there's also a fade out method, and there's a fade toggle. It does basically the same thing, so I'm not going to dig into that. I just wanted you to know that there is another function call that you can use, and there's even this fade to instead of fade in and fade out. And so if you do that, you can fade it to a particular state, right? You can cause it to not fade completely out, but just fade to this particular opacity here. So in addition to the length of time that you're going to take for the fade to take place, in this case, they pass in the slow keyword, which is just a keyword that they allow you to use for this particular function. You can define this optional opacity argument here, and you can keep it from totally being hidden on the page. It just becomes somewhat transparent. So I'm not going to use that. We're not going to use that anywhere. I just want you to read through here and be aware of it. Kind of the same thing with slide. Slide just allows you to, there's a slide down, there's a slide up, there's a slide toggle. Same kind of things, right? It's another way to hide and show information, but it forces it here to do kind of a slide as it fades out. So if I click this guy here, it's going to fade that one by sliding it up. It's going to hide that one, I'm sorry, by sliding it up. And there's a slide down as well. Let's see, right here. If I click it in this one, it slides the panel down. And then just like we had with hide and show, you can toggle it on and off. This one, you just call the single toggle. And each time you click this, it's going to take whatever has the ID panel, which in our case is this div down here that contains the words hello world. There's the ID. Whenever you click that, it toggles the state by sliding it either in or out based on what state it was previously in, right? So again, we're not going to use that explicitly, but you could, right? If I ever tell you that whenever you click this button here, I want you to hide this, if you wanted to, you could use a slide instead, just to kind of play around with some of that stuff. And then also there's this animate function. you select something, then you call animate. And what animate gives you the ability to do is not just simply hide and show, but animate gives you the ability to explicitly define certain CSS properties, and it will, jQuery will handle animating the change so that it goes from whatever the current property is to another one. And so, for example, here we have a div, right? A div with certain parameters set on it, a background color, a height, a width, and a position. Position is absolute. That just means wherever you put it on the page. If you define a location, it would be exactly in those in that that if you kind of consider this area here as an X and Y coordinate plane, it'll be absolutely in that X and Y position if those were explicitly defined. But what you do here is whenever I click this start animation button, it's going to select that div, and it's going to change the CSS property, the left CSS property, to be 250 pixels. And so what we're expecting it to do right now, the left property by default is 0 pixels. So what we're expecting to happen is when we click start animation, this guy's going to move over here 250 pixels. So let's see what happens. Sure enough, it slides it over 250 pixels from where it previously was, right? And so animate gives you the ability to do that with several different properties. Let's just add on, we'll add on the top, the top property here as well. I think you use a comma to do that. Let's see, top. So in addition to setting the left 250 pixels, we also want to set the top 250 pixels. So let's rerun that and let's see what happens then. Look at there. So now it moved it down because it changed the top attribute to 250 as well. You can read through that. I'm not requiring you to do any of that. I just want you to be aware of it. I think it's cool. I think it would probably be something that you think was neat to play around with. The other thing that you need to know as you use something like animate is you need to be aware that there's also a stop call that you can make to stop the animation, right? And so in this example here, if you click this to slide down the panel, if I want to stop it at some point, if I want to give the user the ability to stop that animation that's happening, and that could be you're using the animate command or you're using the slide down command, any of those commands that animate objects on the page, you can call this stop on that particular element, and it'll stop whatever animation's taking place, right? So stop can be handy. You know, this is one of those things that you can use, like if you were to design some sort of game, and you're animating things on the page, and then the user does this particular action here, you're going to stop that animation. This is how you maybe could build something like that, some kind of simple game based on JavaScript and jQuery. So just want you to be aware of those. We need to dig a little deeper into the callback and chaining, so I'm going to stop this video so it doesn't get too long. But that's kind of an introduction to the sort of animation aspect of jQuery. And the next video will go into callback and chaining.